You may not see it, but there is a power shift happening on the planet. It's happening today. You're being distracted by various maneuvers, something going on in Russia, evacuations from one club to another, hospitals being evacuated. In other cities and other countries, there are other kinds of events. All of this is to divert attention from something entirely different. And that different is the takeover of our world power by new people. As soon as you lose your economic usefulness, the state, at the very least, loses interest in you, and you can no longer receive adequate help for your health. You are simply not needed at all. Recently, the main psychobiological questions have been attracting more and more attention from scientists and the educated public, obviously due to the fact that the relationship between the psyche and life is one of the most pressing and important issues, fundamentally affecting our worldview. Naturally, they truly deserve careful consideration, not only from everyone dedicated to studying any branch of the biological sciences, but equally from all thinking people in general. Guided by this, Bekhterev wrote a book about the psyche, about the influence of the psyche on our lives and yours. It goes without saying that in such matters as those currently under discussion, only the establishment of the main points of view is likely to be significant. A more detailed study of the subject should be left to the future. The book does not have a publication date. This is very interesting. Someone tried to write 1903 by hand at the bottom. When the date has been changed and probably was not there at all for some reason, then why is it 1903? And why isn't it a posthumous edition when someone just took it and tore it apart? I mean the edition, the book itself, someone just took it and cut it up everywhere they could. In the book, Bekhterev writes about views on the nature of mental activity, dualism and monism, spiritualistic and materialistic monism, and monism in the true sense of the word. Perspectives, criticism of the views of dualism. You see, when Blavatsky writes about spiritualistic activity and materialistic monism, in fact, later Bekhterev also writes about spiritualistic and materialistic monism. But we're told, no, spiritualism is something that doesn't exist. That's how they explain it to us. Great scientists who studied the psyche and psychiatry spoke and wrote about this. It exists. But officials in the State Duma forbid people from thinking and insist this does not and cannot exist. If you are a Komsomol member, if you are a communist, then you can't even talk about such ancient understandings of life. That's how it is, friends. In some particular cases, we genuinely revere Bekhterev and fully accept his professional opinion. However, in other cases, we simply begin to fabricate or distort the truth and claim, often quite insistently, that this cannot possibly be. Psychology, as a scientific discipline, cannot and should not be limited or reduced to only mental phenomena alone. It must also take into account the influence of hidden energy that produces physical and mental phenomena. The primary source of hidden energy should be sought in external influences on the sense organs and in internal conditions of nutrition and chemical transformations, in the attempt to subject mental activity to the law of conservation of energy. It is impossible to explain life solely by mechanical laws. Life and psyche are two inseparable phenomena, both determined by the same hidden energy. The most interesting question is the transmission of organism traits to offspring. Genes carry the various important traits and characteristics of your organism, whether these traits were acquired during your lifetime or inherited from your ancestors. In essence, genes serve as the carriers of both inherited and acquired characteristics. September 21st, 2017, the Nativity of the Mother of God. This is exactly the right day to tell you that today the economy has a very strong impact on our health, and that bioengineering has reached such a level that it can easily restore your health, restore your vision. And these are not the kinds of surgeries you might be thinking of. Absolutely not. There is a different kind of medicine that is currently unavailable to you because it costs a huge amount of money. Because today our health directly depends on our economy, that is, on the financial situation of your family, your own wallet. If your finances are average, you'll be treated with old methods, primitive, outdated ones, as they say, right? But if you have a large wallet, you'll receive treatment on a different level where bioengineering will help you. And this isn't something out of reach. These are completely ordinary things that have been used for a long time. As you know, experiments on humans have been conducted for a very long time, for many years. And these experiments have yielded excellent results. Of course, many people lost their lives because of these experiments. However, today, bioengineering has certainly reached a point where, by influencing a person's DNA, they achieve something completely different. In other words, the body is renewed solely through the influence on DNA. The capabilities of our brain can also be expanded only through influence. You make a change here, make a change there. Of course, as you understand, I am not a bioengineer, so I can't explain much to you. I know that this exists. I know that this has existed for a long time and wasn't invented just today. So, our current inequality will become a major barrier in that people who have good money will be biologically healthy. And the rest of the population will live outside of that. Especially, of course, if you have also passed the age when you can work. In other words, you have become unnecessary. Then medicine becomes inaccessible to you, and all other aspects of human life on earth are closed off to you as well. In other words, you are discarded, treated as raw material. Normal people, let's say wealthy people, never watch TV, and they rarely follow the paths that are recommended to you. For example, endless nightclubs with low-frequency sounds, some incredibly chemically processed foods grown on raw materials that, in principle, it's like the destruction of your biological body. There are two ways to improve a person biologically. The first is to change something in their biological structure by making adjustments to their DNA. And the second, more radical way is to combine organic and inorganic parts and even possibly connect the brain directly to a computer. And this exists, and it has been in effect for a long time already. We live in different worlds. People with great wealth and people without money. These are two different worlds. That's why today, perhaps some things I say may seem unacceptable to you, or you may not understand them. Although I am saying things that it would be good for you to know, so that you can look at yourself from the outside. Thus, the wealthy, simply by having the financial means, can afford this kind of optimization of their brains, let's say, or their bodies, and quite literally be better than the rest. They can acquire advanced abilities, better health, and a longer lifespan. And how much longer, we don't know, because even this data is unavailable to us. We have completely different gradations. We are in different circumstances. Thus, our biological condition today is directly dependent on the economic situation of our family, our own immediate family, and our own personal wallet. This, in turn, affects not only your biological health, but it also influences power. Because today, power will be seized, taken only by those who are healthier. If someone has more advanced brain capabilities, they see more, they can look further ahead. They see the situation differently altogether. And we are just stumbling around somewhere on our feet like ants. This gives an expanded consciousness. It really does. So, they are the ones taking power today, which is exactly what's happening on the planet. You may not see it, but there is a power shift happening on the planet. It's happening right now. You are being distracted by all sorts of maneuvers. Some in Russia, evacuations from one club to another, hospitals being evacuated, and in other cities and countries, other kinds of events. This is diverting attention from something entirely different. And that different thing is the takeover of our world power by new people. As soon as you lose your economic usefulness, the state at the very least loses interest in you, and you can't adequately receive help for your health, right? You are simply not needed at all. So in this particular case, your health, your overall physical condition, and your life truly depend on just a tiny handful of people. It depends on the oligarchs, as we often call them, the wealthiest individuals on the planet. They take power into their own hands and they decide what to do with you. This is the kind of system we've ended up with today. They give us these glasses that completely shield us from reality. We don't live in the real world. We live in some kind of world invented for us, created for us by someone else's will. That's where we live. We don't even have our own lives. We're always working like a hamster on a wheel. Once we've served our time, not needed anymore, out you go. And in people's minds, there's still this attitude, the state owes us. But you see, there isn't even a state anymore. They're gone. They're disappearing. Now there's only private property, private ownership of people, private ownership of land. But human resources are hardly of any interest. It's needed in a different way, let's just say, as biological material or as robot machines. And even now, there are already a huge number of robots that completely replace humans. And humans are no longer needed. But that's the situation we have on Earth. Believe it or not, because this is your future, and today your future depends entirely on the goodwill of a small handful of elites. By elite, we mean those who are above us. Yes, those who are better than us. It doesn't matter whether they are financial magnates or just have a different mentality, but still they are above and better. Ultimately, we're talking about consciousness, about expanding the capabilities of our brain. Because by expanding the capabilities of our brain, we can also improve our physical health. Very few people today have access to these expanded capabilities. However, there are certain substances that chemically affect our brain, and they open up and expand consciousness. These are not the drugs people talk about, and that have also been tested on humans. And why were all sorts of different drugs created? In order to test them on people. They tested them and found out which one works better and what effects each of them has. Then new batches of drugs are pumped into these narcotics along with poisons. In other words, along with these substances that expand consciousness, with chemicals, poisons are also added and they destroy the human body. So when a person takes them, they simply start to die before your eyes. This is exactly what, let's say, we are being led to today. That is our youth. Because mainly, you see, the middle generation doesn't use this kind of chemistry. They are already concerned about their health. But the time has come to take care of one's health. But young people, they can't keep up with the pace of our lives, and of course, they turn to drugs. But this is a controlled young herd through certain chemical substances. But there's also climate weapons. That is, climate weapons also help to cleanse our land of unnecessary biological material, meaning humanity. Such a large number of people is no longer needed, because now everything will mostly be automated. That is, robots will do the work, even robots in human form, but they will do it. They will be completely different. They won't think the way we do today, because we are also biological robots, essentially. But we are a creation of a different system. We have a different matrix, a different system of our creation. But those that are being created today, they're already made, and they are completely different. They are completely excluded, disconnected from the kind of thinking that would only harm them. That's why certain memory cells are completely erased in them, and they are deprived of memory. They are simply robots that live for the day, for the hour. They complete a task, move on, complete another, move on. You can't even question them because they don't remember what they did 2 hours ago. There are already such robots. They are already serving the elite. And climate weapons today, you see, have started to be used so actively in our lives. Or do you think they wouldn't dare to destroy part of the population? They have already destroyed part of the population, and they are moving further in that direction. Of course, they will continue to destroy the population because it's not profitable for them. They don't need it. You know, like when the number of chickens suddenly multiplies, or rabbits, well, of course, you have to get rid of them. Why would you need them? That's exactly how people are treated today. Whether you want to hear it or not, that's just the state of your psyche. If you can't listen to and understand this, then how can you change your life even a little so as not to end up in the gears of today's human disposal? If you can't hear this, then it means your psyche isn't entirely healthy. That's really how it is, because people with a healthy psyche try to listen and do something about it. Of course, you won't earn that kind of money. It's impossible because it's theft from the whole world. The resources these people possess are resources that belong to all nations and all people. However, today you are deprived of ownership of these resources. By the way, just so you know, all the resources on the planet are owned by only one queen, Elizabeth, who of course is no longer alive today. She died, I repeat once again, as I mentioned in other videos, in 2014. But nevertheless, the very fact is that all the elites of the world, all the people who existed, supposedly transferred their rights to her to manage and use all these resources of the entire planet. Do you understand what that means? That all the planet's resources belong to just one queen? And today, there is a kind of small mutiny on the ship called planet. Global dominance is changing, the elite is changing, everything is changing. And we are merely witnesses to the changes happening today. Economic inequality leads to our biological inequality. It's not just about the Sharikovs. We say, oh, there are some Sharikovs, someone down there in the zoological ranks. Those times are over. Soon we will all become Sharikovs. That's actually the case. Those people who are still capable of thinking will soon disappear. And so, economic inequality will give rise to biological inequality. We will not be able to live as biologically developed as needed to keep up with our time. Our time is racing forward, and we are just standing still today because economic inequality has already played a cruel trick on us. We have been left at the bottom while those at the top, the elite, have long since surged ahead. This is Tanya Karatsuba, Said Burkan, with you